Baroness Christine Blower and Co-Convenor of the Freedom for Öcalan Campaign UK. Thanks for joining us today.
I'm very pleased to be with you, Aaron.
Thank you. Dear Christine, as you know, the Freedom for Öcalan campaign has started from 74 different places all over the world. First of all, how important is that new era, the new campaign? How do you evaluate it? Let's start with that one.
Okay, well, let me say that I feel that I've been doing these interviews about the situation with Öcalan for a very long time. And we don't feel that we're making the progress that we need to make because ultimately Öcalan needs to be free. And that means we have to relaunch and start new campaigns, because we need to keep this in the public eye. So the new campaign is very important and it does have a very specific demand. And I'm going to read it so I make sure that I get it absolutely right. The the demand is that the Kurdish leader Abdullah Ocalan must be allowed to meet with his lawyers and family and ultimately freed under conditions that allow him to play a role in finding a just and democratic political solution to Turkey's decades old Kurdish conflict. That was launched internationally and globally. A lot of people were involved in it. And it's now our job to make sure that we keep the focus on that campaign, on every aspect of that campaign.
Thank you, Christine. Secondly, what are your concerns about the current treatment of Abdullah Öcalan uh, as a prisoner in İmralı Island? And as you know, also the CPT and European
Mm.
Commission is responsible of his treatment as well, and there is nothing has been heard from Öcalan as well as the responsible EU constitutions as well. So, how would you going to comment on that?
Well, let me say, first of all, that of course, this goes back to the fact that Öcalan's so-called trial was criticized deeply by Amnesty International as being completely unreasonable from the word go, so that we know that from 99 his treatment has been completely unreasonable. And we know that the isolation in which he's been kept over much of the time that he's been incarcerated has been completely unreasonable and, of course, in convention of the UN Mandela Principles. So we are very concerned about his treatment. And, of course, the longer he remains in isolation, the less we know about his current situation. I think I may have said this on an interview with you before, that we once had some sixth form students, some 17, 18-year-old students in a meeting. And they said, how do you even know he's still alive? Now, I think we do know he's still alive, but we need to be able to hear from him. He needs to be able to communicate with his family and his lawyers. And that's the reason why we have to keep making the case for this campaigning. His treatment is simply unacceptable and, almost certainly unlawful.
Thank you. Do you think Turkey and the Western powers, especially, they are afraid from Öcalan's ideas, and that could be a reason that they keep him under the isolation, harsh isolation, as well as they trying to silence him. So, in that point, how important is the figure of Öcalan? Do you think he's a symbol of a peace in the Middle East now? Because also just to remind that many European academics, politicians, they see him as a not only as a Kurdish leader, also as a political thinker of our age. So how would you going to mix up and value all these and bring it to the how important Abdullah Öcalan's figure?
Well, let me say that I every day when I think about this, I'm utterly amazed by the depth and the breadth and the perspicacity of Öcalan's thinking as we are able to read it in all of the writings that he's produced while he's been in prison. It is remarkable that a man suffering this isolation can really produce and develop these ideas. And I think we all know that Yin Yan Azadi, the call which comes now from women in Iran, but is now being echoed by women across the globe, has its origins in these ideas that Öcalan has, that actually equality between women and men is so important, it's so central. And the fact that he thinks about multi faith, multi religious, multi ethnic uh, ways of living and working is clearly completely foundational. And if we were to follow Öcalan's ideas, we would have a much more peaceful world. Now, this is not what the Turkish regime wants to hear. They want him to be silenced because this is in contradistinction with the way that they want Turkey to be run. So I understand why they would be afraid of him. I understand why it ended up that the whole question of Öcalan being involved in the peace talks was ended by the Turkish regime because they didn't want to see that kind of thing happening. They didn't want people being exposed to those ideas. And this is absolutely critical. We must make sure that more of his ideas are exposed to more people so that they can see that this is not just an issue for the Kurds. Critical though it is for the Kurds, it's actually a global and international issue.
Thank you. So let's underline the campaign as well. It's, as I mentioned, it started on 74 different points of the world, and it has been started by the Kurdish friends, basically. So, what else needs to be done to support the campaign and grow the campaign? As you know, the Mandela's campaign has been started in a similar way, as well as the today updated one of the updated campaigns, uh, Julian Assange, Free Assange
Mm,
campaign,
mm,
which is needs to be taken as an example because it's a huge campaign as well. So,
mm.
what is your suggestions? What else needs to be done?
Well, my engagement clearly is obviously through Peace in Kurdistan, but also through the Freedom for Öcalan campaign. And you know, I think I probably say this every time I speak to you. I am both enthused by the campaign, but also dispirited that we haven't managed to make more impact than we have. Clearly, some of our friends and our comrades in Europe are having much more impact. I think we noticed that in Italy. In England, it's very difficult to have an impact at governmental level, although we obviously should be pressing our government to make sure that um, all of the things which the European institutions ought to be doing, the Committee for the Prevention of Torture, the things that they have an absolute responsibility to do, we should be making sure that that's on the agenda of our government and of all of the places where we have a voice to try and influence our politicians. And I just think that we have to redouble our efforts in the trade union movement because although we're smaller than we would like to be, we are an important movement in Britain. And we need to make sure that our members actually know and understand who and what who Abdullah Öcalan is and what he stands for and how his ideas would make life so much better for everybody.
Thank you. Also, can we get your freedom for Öcalan message and how important at that point is the freedom for Öcalan? While as you can see, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is on, as well as the Russia-Ukraine conflict is on. The Middle East looks like a burning place now, and
Yeah.
Öcalan wants to bring peace. So, in that case, how important of his freedom do you think? And what is your message to free Öcalan?
Well, I repeat that the key message from all of the people who were engaged on October the 10th were that he must be free. He must be free to help resolve the decades old Kurdish conflict. But his ideas are ideas about peace and about a better society. And if we were really looking at those, we would be able to see their applicability in all of the situations that we're looking at the moment. I mean, it's absolutely true that the Middle East is in a parlous state, and our hearts go out to the Palestinians. but these things didn't start recently. They started long ago. And we must work for the ideas that Öcalan has to make sure that everywhere we can be bringing the voice of peace, of ceasefire, of peace, and of making sure that both the Kurds, but also in all other parts of the Middle East and globally, that we are really entertaining and engaging with these ideas, which would make the world a safer, a more peaceable, frankly, a better place, particularly for women, but also for everyone.
Baroness and co-convenor of the Freedom for Öcalan campaign, Christine Blower. Thanks for joining us and thank you for your valuable comments today.
Thank you very much, Eric.